Jasmine entered the lobby of the Sunrise Tower Hotel, an elegant establishment in the heart of the city, after a long day of meetings with constituents. Her black suit was impeccable, and a small silver cross necklace, a gift from her grandmother, glistened at her neck, a reminder of her faith and roots. The air carried the scent of freshly brewed coffee and expensive perfume, while the soft notes of a piano melody drifted from the nearby bar. Guests, mostly businessmen and tourists, buzzed in the lobby, creating an atmosphere of sophistication. For Jasmine, however, this evening was meant to be a brief respite before her next speaking engagement. She approached the reception desk, holding a bag of documents. A young receptionist, a blonde with perfectly styled hair, looked up and offered a warm smile. "Good evening. How can I assist you?" Her voice was professional, but a flicker of curiosity danced in her eyes. "Jasmine Crockett, I have a reservation for tonight," Jasmine replied, pulling out her ID. The receptionist, whose badge read Caitlin, nodded and began typing on the computer. But within moments, her smile faded. She frowned, as if encountering something puzzling. "I'm sorry, Miss Crockett, there seems to be an issue with your reservation," she said, avoiding eye contact. Jasmine sighed. She knew such issues were rarely accidental, especially for someone with her reputation. Her speeches in Congress, where she openly criticized systemic racism and economic inequality, had made her a target for those who disliked rocking the boat. "What exactly is the issue?" Jasmine asked, her tone calm but firm. Caitlin nervously tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Well, I need to check with the manager. Please wait just a moment." She stepped away to a small office behind the desk, leaving Jasmine to wait. Guests in the lobby began casting curious glances. Jasmine felt the tension slowly building, but maintained her composure. She knew any display of emotion could be used against her. A few minutes later, the manager appeared, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a cold stare. His badge identified him as Richard. He held a tablet and looked as though he had already made up his mind before speaking. "Miss Crockett, I'm afraid we cannot accommodate you," he said, his voice even but laced with condescension. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "And why is that? I booked the room 2 weeks ago." Payment was confirmed. Richard shrugged, as if the matter was out of his hands. "We have certain policies regarding, the appearance of our guests. He paused, his gaze sliding to the cross necklace at her neck. "Religious symbol might cause discomfort to some of our clients." Silence fell. Jasmine felt a rush of heat to her temples, but her face remained impassive. In the lobby, a few guests exchanged glances, whispering to one another. Caitlin, standing off to the side, lowered her eyes. "You're saying my cross is the problem?" Jasmine asked slowly, her voice steady but sharp as a blade. Richard shrugged again, trying to appear nonchalant. "It's not personal. We're a secular establishment. We aim to avoid any controversial symbols." Jasmine gave a faint smile, but her eyes burned. "Controversial? A cross I wear to honor my faith and my family is a problem for your hotel? Are you serious?" Richard flushed, but stood his ground. "I'm just following policy. If you disagree, you can contact our legal department. Now, please leave the premises." A few guests in the lobby began to murmur their disapproval. An elderly couple nearby, dressed in elegant attire, exchanged a look. The man, with gray mustaches and the bearing of a veteran, muttered to his wife, "This is just shameful. She's a congresswoman." Jasmine nodded slowly, as if accepting a challenge. She pulled out her phone and started recording. "All right, Mr. Richard, let's clarify. You're denying me a room because of my cross. Is that correct?" Richard scowled, sensing a trap, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "I said we're following policy. If you don't like it, that's your problem." Jasmine stopped the recording and slipped the phone into her pocket. "You just made a big mistake," she said quietly. "But I won't argue. I'll leave. For now." She turned and walked out of the hotel, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Outside, the evening air was warm but charged, like the calm before a storm. Jasmine got into her car, but instead of driving away, opened her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She knew this wasn't just a personal conflict. It was a symbol of a larger issue, prejudice masked by policies and rules. Inside the hotel, tension was mounting. Caitlin, who had witnessed the scene, approached Richard, her voice trembling. "You just kicked out Congresswoman Crockett. Do you realize that?" Richard waved a dismissive hand. "She's nobody, just another person thinking they deserve special treatment." But Caitlin wasn't so sure. She knew Jasmine Crockett wasn't the type to back down. Something told her this evening would mark the beginning of the end for the Sunrise Tower. Jasmine sat in her car, her thoughts buzzing like a swarm of bees. She could call the press, spark a public scandal. But that would be too easy. She knew real change came not through shouting, but through action. She opened her contacts in the city council and dialed number. "Hey Lisa, I need your help," she said when her friend answered. "I was just denied a room at the Sunrise Tower because of my cross." "Yes, I'm serious. I need all the information you can get on this hotel. Owners, licenses, complaints. Everything." Lisa, a seasoned lawyer, laughed, but her voice was filled with determination. "They don't know who they're messing with. I'm on it right now." Jasmine hung up and looked at the hotel. Its sign glowed in the darkness, but to her it was a symbol of injustice she was determined to dismantle. She knew this fight was just beginning. The next morning, Dallas awoke to a buzz of news. The sun was just rising above the horizon, bathing the skyscrapers in golden light, but a storm was already brewing on social media. Jasmine Crockett had posted a brief message on X, attaching the audio recording of her conversation with the Sunrise Tower Hotel manager. She added no accusations, only writing, "This happened yesterday. What do you think?" Her words were like a stone tossed into a still lake. Ripples of outrage spread across the city. In coffee shops and at bus stops, elderly residents who still remembered the civil rights struggles passionately discussed the situation. For them, this wasn't just a hotel incident. It was yet another example of a system cloaking prejudice in policy. Local radio stations picked up the story, and by noon, Jasmine's story was everywhere. Yet she remained silent, working behind the scenes. In her downtown apartment, Jasmine sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and her laptop. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with a faint aroma of lavender from a candle she had lit to calm her nerves. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages, but she ignored them, focusing on an email from Lisa, her lawyer friend. Lisa had sent a detailed report on the Sunrise Tower. The hotel was owned by a major corporation, Horizon Hospitality, which operated dozens of properties nationwide. What caught Jasmine's attention, however, was the history of complaints, from religious discrimination to mistreatment of employees. All of it was carefully concealed behind expensive lawyers and non-disclosure agreements. Jasmine leaned back in her chair, her fingers tapping on the table. She could have pursued public pressure, but she knew that would only make the corporation dig in its heels. Instead, she decided to act more strategically. She called Lisa. "Can you arrange a meeting with someone from the city council who oversees licenses?" Jasmine asked. "And I need a contact in the Hotel Workers Union. I want to talk to the people who work there." "You're planning something big, aren't you?" Lisa laughed. "Give me a couple of hours." While Lisa got to work, Jasmine prepared for an unexpected move. She knew a direct confrontation with the hotel would only escalate tensions. But if she could show that the Sunrise Tower wasn't just one bad manager, but part of a larger problem, change would be inevitable. Meanwhile, at the Sunrise Tower Hotel, the atmosphere was tense, like the calm before a storm. Richard, the manager, stormed through the office, snapping at anyone in his path. After Jasmine's post went viral, the hotel's phone hadn't stopped ringing. Journalists, activists, and even outraged customers demanded answers. Caitlin, the receptionist, tried to stay out of it, but her conscience gnawed at her. She had seen how Richard treated other employees and heard rumors about management pressuring those who dared to complain. During her lunch break, Caitlin sat in the small staff room, clutching a plastic coffee cup. Beside her was Juan, a janitor who had worked at the hotel for 5 years. His hands were calloused from labor, his eyes weary from constant stress. "Have you seen what they're saying about us?" Juan asked quietly, nodding at his old smartphone. "People think we're all like Richard." Caitlin sighed. "It's not fair. We're just doing our jobs." But maybe she's right. Maybe it's time for a change. Juan shook his head. "If I speak up, they'll fire me. I've got 2 kids, Caitlin. I can't take that risk." She nodded, but determination flickered in her eyes. She knew Jasmine Crockett wasn't someone who would simply vanish after a scandal. If anyone could make a difference, it was her. By evening, Jasmine had a plan. She arranged a meeting with Emilio, a representative from the Hotel Workers Union, who agreed to organize an informal conversation with a few Sunrise Tower employees. The meeting would take place at a small community center near the hotel, away from prying eyes. Jasmine also received confirmation from a city council member who promised to review the hotel's licenses for compliance. But the real turning point came when Lisa called with unexpected news. "Jasmine, you won't believe this," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "I spoke with one of my contacts at Horizon Hospitality. It turns out Richard isn't just a manager. He's the nephew of the corporation's CEO. That's why he gets away with everything." Jasmine froze, her eyes narrowing. "So it's not just a bad manager. It's a system protecting its own." "Exactly," Lisa confirmed. "And there's more. They've had similar incidents at other hotels, but they always cover them up. If you can bring this to light, the Sunrise Tower and their entire network will be in serious trouble." Jasmine's heart raced. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. But she knew she couldn't act alone. She needed the people who worked at the hotel, their voices, their stories. She glanced at the clock. 2 hours until the meeting with the workers. The community center smelled of old wood and slightly musty air. The fluorescent lights were dim, but the atmosphere was warm, thanks to volunteers bringing coffee and cookies. Jasmine sat at a round table next to Emilio, the union representative. Across from them were 3 Sunrise Tower employees, Caitlin, Juan, and an elderly maid named Rosa, whose hands trembled with nerves. Jasmine began the conversation gently, her voice calm but sincere. "I know you're taking a risk by being here, and I'm not asking you to do anything you're not ready for. But I want to hear your truth. What's happening at the Sunrise Tower?" Rosa, her gray strands escaping from under a headscarf, spoke first. Her voice was quiet but filled with pain. "I've been working there for 15 years. Things used to be different. But now, Richard yells at us if we fall behind. Last month, he fined me for taking a 5-minute break to drink water. Said I was slowing down the team." Juan nodded, his fists clenched. "They don't pay me for overtime, even though I stay until midnight to clean. When I complained, Richard said he could find someone else to take my place." Caitlin, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, her voice shaking. "I saw how he kicked you out, Miss Crockett. I knew it was wrong, but I was scared to say anything. We're all scared." Jasmine listened, her face calm, but her insides boiling. This wasn't just her fight, it was the fight of all these people who faced injustice every day. "You're not alone," she said, looking each of them in the eye. "If we come together, we can make them answer for this. But I need your help. Are you ready to share your stories publicly?" Silence fell. Rosa lowered her gaze. One nervously rubbed his hands. But Caitlin suddenly nodded. "I'm ready. I'm tired of being afraid." That moment was a turning point. Jasmine felt hope stirring within her. She knew there was still much work ahead, but now she had allies. And she was ready to use all her power, as a congresswoman, a lawyer, and a woman of faith, to dismantle the system that allowed people like Richard to thrive. That same evening, Jasmine received another unexpected call. A local journalist, an elderly man named Fred, who had been writing about Dallas for decades, reached out. "Ms. Crockett, I heard about your situation," he said, his voice raspy but brimming with enthusiasm. "And I found something. Horizon Hospitality has ties to several politicians who block investigations into their violations. If you give me the green light, I can publish an article that'll stir up this swamp." Jasmine smiled. She knew it was a risk, but she also knew the truth was her strongest weapon. "Write it, Fred," she said, "and don't hold back." The next day, Fred's article exploded in the local news. The headline screamed, "Sunrise Tower Scandal. Discrimination or Corporate Conspiracy." It detailed not only Jasmine's incident, but also systemic violations across Horizon Hospitality's network. By evening, protests erupted in the city. People, from young activists to retirees, gathered outside the hotel with signs demanding justice. But Jasmine knew this was just the beginning. She stood on her apartment balcony, gazing at the lights of Dallas. Her cross necklace glinted in the streetlight, reminding her why she was fighting. A battle lay ahead, not just for her, but for everyone whose voices the system had silenced. And she was ready to fight to the end. 2 weeks had passed since Fred's article rocked Dallas. The streets outside the Sunrise Tower Hotel buzzed daily with protesters, their voices merging into a powerful chorus of outrage. Signs reading "Justice for Jasmine" and "No Discrimination" waved above the crowd, while elderly city residents, who remembered the civil rights marches, stood shoulder to shoulder with young activists. The smell of hot asphalt mingled with the aroma of coffee from nearby cafes, and the sounds of megaphones and car horns created an atmosphere simmering with tension and hope. Jasmine Crockett, however, remained in the shadows. She didn't appear at the protests or give loud interviews. Her work took place behind closed doors, in city council offices, union headquarters, and cramped community center rooms, where she listened to the stories of hotel workers. Her quiet confidence acted like a magnet. People who had once been too afraid to speak now dared to share their truth. Caitlin, Juan, and Rosa became her eyes and ears inside the Sunrise Tower, passing along information about violations that had been hidden for years. One evening, as Jasmine prepared for another meeting with union representatives, Lisa called with startling news. "Jasmine, sit down because this is explosive," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "I received an anonymous letter. Someone from inside Horizon Hospitality sent documents. They're proof that the corporation wasn't just covering for Richard. They were deliberately violating labor laws across dozens of their hotels. Underpayment, forced overtime, even threats to workers trying to organize unions." Jasmine's heart raced. She asked Lisa to send the documents and immediately opened them on her laptop. The pages were filled with internal emails, financial reports, and records of complaints that never reached the public. One email, signed by Horizon Hospitality's CEO, directly instructed Richard to handle worker issues by any means necessary. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a bombshell that could bring down the entire corporation. But Jasmine knew documents alone weren't enough. She needed someone to confirm their authenticity. She called Caitlin, who had become a trusted ally. "Caitlin, have you ever heard of anyone in management who might know about these violations?" Jasmine asked. Caitlin hesitated, her voice soft. "There's one person, Mr. Davis, the CFO. He often visited the hotel, but never spoke to us regular workers. I overheard him complaining to Richard that the corporation is taking too many risks. But I'm not sure if he'd talk." Jasmine nodded, her mind racing. She knew convincing Davis would be difficult, but it was her chance. She thanked Caitlin and immediately contacted Fred, the journalist who had already proven his dedication to the cause. "Fred, I need your help," she said. "Find everything you can on Paul Davis, Horizon Hospitality's CFO. And do it quietly." A few days later, Jasmine arranged a meeting with Paul Davis. It was risky. Davis could refuse or, worse, alert the corporation. But Jasmine believed the truth had the power to persuade even those who had long avoided it. The meeting took place in a small cafe on the outskirts of Dallas, where the smell of freshly baked croissants filled the air, and soft jazz music created an illusion of calm. Davis, a man in his 60s with gray hair and a nervous smile, entered the cafe clutching a briefcase. His eyes darted around the room, as if expecting a trap. "Ms. Crockett, I'm only here because you said this concerns my reputation," he began, his voice sharp. "I don't want to be dragged into your circus." Jasmine calmly sipped her coffee, her gaze steady but not hostile. "Mr. Davis, I'm not running a circus. I'm seeking justice. And I know you don't agree with how Horizon does business." She placed a copy of a document mentioning his name in front of him. "That's your signature, isn't it?" Davis paled, his fingers tightening around the briefcase. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. "That's not important," Jasmine replied. "What matters is that you can help stop this. People are suffering, Mr. Davis. Workers, guests, even people like me, kicked out for wearing a cross around their neck. You can stay silent and remain part of the problem. Or you can speak up and become part of the solution." Silence fell. Outside, cars hummed by, and inside, a waitress clattered dishes. Davis lowered his gaze, his hands trembling. "They'll destroy me," he said quietly. "They have connections. Politicians, lawyers." "They're not stronger than the truth," Jasmine interrupted. "And you're not alone. I stand with you. The workers stand with you. All of Dallas stands with you." Davis was silent for a long time, then slowly nodded. "All right, I'll tell everything. But I want guarantees for my safety." Jasmine smiled, her eyes shining. "You'll have them." The following week, Dallas erupted with news. Paul Davis testified before the city council, confirming the document's authenticity and detailing how Horizon Hospitality had violated laws for years. His words, backed by evidence, were the final straw. The city council voted to revoke the Sunrise Towers license, and federal authorities launched an investigation into Horizon's entire network. Richard was fired that same day, and the corporation's CEO resigned under public pressure. But for Jasmine, the true victory wasn't in the hotel's closure. She stood in the community center where she first met the workers, looking at Caitlin, Juan, and Rosa, who were now smiling. The union secured better working conditions for all employees in the network, and Caitlin was promoted to manager of a new hotel set to open on the Sunrise Tower site. "You changed our lives," Rosa said, her eyes glistening with tears. "I thought no one would ever hear us." Jasmine placed a hand on her shoulder. "It wasn't me. It was us. All of us together." That evening, Jasmine stood on the steps of City Hall, invited to speak. The crowd cheered, but she raised a hand, calling for silence. Her cross necklace glinted in the spotlight, and her voice was calm and strong. "This isn't the end," she said. "It's the beginning. Each of us has the power to change injustice if we choose to act with truth and love. Today we won, but tomorrow we keep fighting." The crowd erupted in applause, and the elderly in the front rows, veterans, teachers, activists, nodded with tears in their eyes. They saw in Jasmine an echo of their own struggles, but also hope for the future. Jasmine returned home late that night. Her apartment was quiet, the only sound the ticking of a clock. She sat at the table, still cluttered with papers, and looked at a photo of her grandmother, who had given her the cross. Her heart was full of gratitude, but also an understanding that the fight was far from over. She knew Horizon Hospitality was just one of many systems that needed to change. On the table lay a letter from Caitlin, thanking her and inviting her to the new hotel's opening. Jasmine smiled, warmth spreading through her. It was a small step, but every step mattered. She turned off the light and looked out the window, where Dallas's lights shone like a promise of new possibilities. Tomorrow might bring a new challenge. But Jasmine was ready, and she knew she wouldn't be alone.